I think my guests are probably sick of me introing like this, but I always know when I have a kick-ass guest when they're sitting and jamming to my music, right?
Black Sabbath? Black Sabbath?
It's not, it's one of those things like you can't copyright, so it's not a certain artist, but yeah. Anyways, welcome back, difference makers. I'm super pumped. Here's another episode of Coffee and Grit. And this is my first virtual episode at the new studio, so I'm super excited about that. Talking to Wally Bressler, and Wally has a mission to help as many people as possible to avoid hitting rock bottom before realizing that they can make the changes that are necessary to live a happy and fulfilling life. And if you know anything about my podcast, you know that there's probably a story behind that. maybe some stories, multiple stories,
right?
And maybe those stories have also possibly accumulated into a book that is rising the best-selling ranks called Tragic Hero that Wally has written and just recently released last week.
Thanks.
So super exciting. So Wally Bressler, thank you so much for coming on Coffee and Grit. I'm so super excited to pour into your story.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. Jason, I had the good fortune of meeting a little over a year ago. He was actually on my podcast a while back. He was my first guest, in fact. If you recall, you were my very first guest on my podcast, if you recall. So we've built a nice friendship and business relationship over time. And, I'm super happy to be here today myself. I think today's going to be a lot more grit than coffee, I think.
It's so funny because ever since I came to the studio, my record time is 1:00. And so today being a makeup day, Labor Day was yesterday. And so we didn't have the record time yesterday. So today being 11 a.m. Eastern time where I'm at, I have my coffee today. So I told Grant in the studio that I'm going back to my homage of coffee. It's been a while.
Literally coffee and grit. Perfect.
So 2:00 is way too late for coffee.
I know. Tell me about it, right? Anyway, so I'm super excited to be here and very, very grateful and honored that you'd have me on your show.
Ah, man, absolutely. It's been really cool. You talked about it's probably been almost 2 years, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That we met each other, and I always like to point out to people where I meet certain really good connections in my life because there are all these people out there that have no idea how to meet influential people. And we were just talking beforehand about going to college and kind of that experience. I'm sure we'll probably dive into that a little bit because I think that's really interesting. And I've always had a different thought process around it. And so I'd love to hear more into this. But talking about the relationships and how hard it is, in college, you go and you get relationships, and how hard it is being an 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, or really anybody, and going and meeting really successful people. Right. And so for me, in the last 4.5, almost 5 years since I started my business, I've been on this quest and have just met so many amazing, influential people and have built connections and really good friendships with people. And I realize it's not everybody's quest, not everybody's populating their life with these amazing people like yourself. And so it's just really random because you can find people anywhere. I had gotten on this platform called Clubhouse because everybody's like, it's all the rage, everybody's on it. And so I kept on invited to be a speaker on this certain, a friend of mine, Adam Ranville, shout out to Adam, he's been a guest, and he was doing these events. And so I'd get on and speak. And then Wally started attending them, I think, and then ended up being on the speaker platform with us. And we just, you and I connected and had conversations. And since then, we've been in so many calls together, so many Zooms. Never met each other in person yet. I say yet. That's on the bucket list. But
someday soon, hopefully. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I mean, we've been able to collaborate. Two guys, sales coaching, right? Sales coaching, sales consulting in that world, in that we've been able to come together and collaborate and do some things and just be able to build a friendship like that. It's that I think speaks to both of our mentality of not scarcity, of that, abundance mentality.
No, I agree. It's interesting because, how do I explain this? Like if I was 18, I probably would have never even gotten on Clubhouse. I didn't have, I had okay social skills. I could talk and get along with anybody, but I wasn't necessarily putting myself out there. And because at the time, I had lots of issues I was dealing with internally, lots of emotional issues, psychological issues. And so, externally, outwardly, I looked like the most confident guy in the world, I'm saying, because I could talk to anybody. But that actually was a learned behavioral trait because of all the crappy things that happened when I was a kid. So I kind of created this exterior visage where I meet with people. Oh, well, he's a nice guy. Well, he's this. I'm actually an introvert, believe it or not. Like I'm naturally an introvert, which is weird. And, the best way I could explain that is I do love to talk and get in front of people. I like, but once I'm done talking, like I don't want to run out and go and talk to people. I wanted to go be by myself. In fact, there was an event that I emceed and worked for one of the companies I did a lot of work for about 6 years in a row. And I would be on stage and everything and talking to people, presenting. And then as soon as I was done, like at the last minute of the event, I would go to my room, grab my stuff, and I would go and sit at the movie theater. And I would watch a movie by myself, eating my popcorn and soda, and just minding. And there's a great book called Quiet, Introverts Living in a World of Extroverts, or something to that effect. And it's a really, really good book. I wish I could remember the author, but it talks about how, people who are naturally introverted, they can step outside of their comfort zone to do certain things, but they have to go back and recharge and reconnect with themselves. If that makes any sense. So, because, and here's the thing, my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother are all mostly introverted people. If you could have been sitting next to my dad on fire, my dad wouldn't even tell you that you were burning. I'm saying? He was like, he didn't start up conversations with a lot of people. And so, the trauma that I experienced when I was younger and growing up poor like you and all the stuff that led to the addictions that I had over my life really put me in a position where I wouldn't naturally pick up the phone and call somebody and ask them to get together and do something like this, if that makes any sense. And so you got all these people banging the drum, don't go to college, don't go to college, don't go to college. Okay, and that's fine. And to a certain extent, that works. But there's a decent segment of the population that isn't going to go take the initiative to go meet with somebody who's going to then take them under their wing and do what they need to do. So, for me, I went to a college, about 1,800 kids, Hamilton College, Clinton, New York, and made lots of great connections. It's the type of school where people stay in touch with each other for decades, you know what I'm saying? And our football team, the guys from, most like 80, probably like 83 to 93 that decade, we really stayed in touch with each other. In fact, we all just went up to Central New York to honor our coaches and stuff. So, it's been great, and I thank God I have those connections because they've been able to help me accomplish some things in life that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. But,
well, and I think that's it, is because, and I've always talked about like college, sometimes education, you go to school for communications and then you go to school for a bachelor degree in science and then you end up running some company as a CEO of,
I was an English
doing
major.
Sales and marketing, or, you're not, you're an English major and you end up selling, right? I've employed so many art and communication majors, over time. And so you look at that and see like, oh, was school really worth it? But I've long argued that the thing that you get out of that is you build those relationships, one, and two, you do get that experience of getting out of your comfort zone. You're not at home anymore. You go out and you kind of live an adult life for the first time. You have to make your decisions.
Yeah. And one of the great things about the school that I went to, they have a really, really strong job placement and alumni system. So my senior year, I went to New York City and I did an internship with a woman who went to my college that owns a PR firm. So I went and worked in New York City for a while and went to her office, and she taught me how to do all kinds of stuff that I still use today. So look, school is not everybody. Like my son, he's 18. He's not going to get his college degree. Yeah. We're going to make him go and take some classes, but he's getting his real estate license because that's what he wants to do. And he knows somebody that can help him be successful in real estate. So, he's not going to go. My two oldest went to college or have going to college. My youngest probably go to college. He didn't want to do it. So it's not for everybody.
I think the big thing out of this is you're saying and identifying is that everybody has their own thing. Everybody has their own path. And so often we try to fit everybody into the box. We tell everybody you have to go to college, or we tell everybody like, oh, you shouldn't go to college. It's a waste of money. It's not it fits everybody rule. Everybody has their own path and their own thing that is it's identifying that. And I think that's really what life is about, is going through and figuring out, who am I?
Right. Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection, really talks about that. Stop trying to be what other people want you to be. A lot of times we put ourselves in our own box because we think of what people want us to be. And we lose a lot of happiness because we're continually trying to be someone that someone else wants us to be rather than who we want to be. And then I forget the 5 regrets of the dying. Bonnie, I forget her Australian hospice nurse, Bonnie, I forget her last name. The number one regret of the dying is that they didn't do what they wanted to do to please themselves. They did what other people wanted them to do. And as a result, they left a lot of life on the table, so to speak. So, I think, at some point you've got to make a decision that you're going to want to go and do something and take, the good with the learning opportunities. But at the end of the day, if you're doing what you want to do, at least you'll be happy. It's kind of like, remember Good Will Hunting?
Yeah.
He's like, he says 50 years from now, he says, you're going to be going ahead and quoting passages and have an education that you paid $100,000 for that you could have gotten for 97 cents in late fees at the public library. And he says, yeah, but at least, he says, you'll be serving fries to my kids, on our way to our ski trip. He says, yeah, but at least I won't be unoriginal. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think that's what just kind of stuck with me. But I think, and this is why college was good for me, because it helped me, at least tap into some thought processes that I've used later in life to be more courageous about not living life the way that I was living for 45 years.
Going back to the beginning, I talked about your mission to help people realize they don't have to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Tell me the stories around that. What is it? Tell me about your rock bottom.
Yeah. Do you want to know how I got there, or do you just want to know?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so, you've probably heard that, trauma is generational, and it's actually physiologically generational. Like, it literally sits within our physiology. And, the way our parents treated them is the way our grandparents treated our parents, and the way they treated us. When I was in prison, I read a book, The 7 Things That Parents Do to Screw Up Their Kids. And chapter 1 was the opposite of dysfunction is dysfunction, meaning your parents do one of 3 things. And I'll get to the answer to your question. I'm just kind of said it this way. Mm-hmm. Your parents are going to do one of 3 things. They're either going to treat you the way their parents treated them. And so if they were treated, very dysfunctionally and treated horribly, then you're going to get that. They're going to be in the middle, and they're going to try and do a better job and not do what their parents did and try and be a better parent. Or they're going to go in the entire opposite direction and create dysfunction in another fashion, meaning their parents were, completely absent, didn't do anything. And so they're going to be like helicopter parents, Yep. So that dysfunction still presents itself. So anyway, my parents, I grew up with lots of Italian influences in my family on both sides of the family, which is part of what I think attracted my parents to each other. But, my dad's mom was a very mean woman. And her husband, my grandfather, was very much passive and she told him what to do. My mom's parents, I think, I don't know, either of them got out of the 6th grade. My grandfather on my mom's side was an immigrant from Italy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they did odd jobs and made money. So, no formal training in parenting. And, the Italian way of raising is yelling and hitting and, and holding people accountable. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah. When I was 3 and 4 years old, 5 years old, one of my punishments was to be sent to bed without dinner, which creates a lot of uncertainty for somebody when they're young, and so I would say by 6 years old, I really had already had anxiety around food and started, a binge eating disorder that's lasted a long time. I was sexually abused when I was 10. And back in the late 60s and early 70s, nobody talked about, don't let anybody touch your body, right? Don't let anybody touch your body. Don't touch anybody else's body. So when it happened, I never told anybody. And I'm not sure they would have done anything about it either, And then when I was 11, I found my father's, pornographic magazines and started looking at pornography regularly. And by the time I was 12, I ended up having sex on a pretty regular basis and engaging in sexual activity. And then this whole time, just to layer over that, was lots of bullying, and lots of people get bullied. So I was bullied like crazy. And so by the time I was 14, I really didn't like myself. I mean, I already created this belief system about myself that I wasn't a good person, that I didn't deserve good things. And obviously that skews your decision-making for the rust of your life. And what I call them hidden identities, right? Things that you believe about yourself that sometimes you don't even realize, right? Like they limit what you think you can do, what you think you can't do, what you're willing to do. And so, had nothing like that happen, I'd probably be an introvert like the rest of my family, high S's and high C personalities from the DISC test. But there was a very noticeable shift by the time I was 14. Instead of, suffering pain and whatnot at the hands of other people, I started inflicting pain on myself and other people. So,
you took control the way you saw you could.
Yeah. Well, I had to control. Yeah. I was just like, what, I'm out of control here. I don't like these feelings. But the problem is I wasn't dealing with any of those things. And so as things got worse, I made more bad decisions. So, I'm 54. I've never had a healthy relationship with a woman. Most of it was just engaging in sexual activity because that was the way I found approval and acceptance. I've probably blown about $5 million in my lifetime because, number my parents never showed me the value of money. And quite honestly, I use money to gain people's affection and attention. I partially ruined a marriage. I was unfaithful to my ex-wife several times. My kids all went through a truckload of uncertainty. I went to prison for years, so dealing with the fallout from that. Lost a lot of friends, because of that. If you ever want to find out who your friends are, go to prison. You'll find out. Yeah. The people that come visit you and talk to you, those are your friends. So
how many people did?
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, I was really surprised. Because I was a piece of shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I did a lot of nice things for a lot of people and I built good relationships, but I lived in fear all day long, every day. So I did what I had to do to make that fear go away. And unfortunately I hurt a lot of people as a result of that. But I would say, I don't know, probably a dozen people came and visited me over the period of the year that I was there. One guy, very good friend of mine, he tried to come unnoticed and without notice, but they wouldn't let him in because it wasn't a visiting day. I got letters from people, calls and stuff like that. And then when I got out, I was received back. But, I was, and here's the thing, you would think prison would be rock bottom, right? You're in prison. I wasn't trying to go to prison.
Nobody ever says I want to be in prison when I grow up.
There's some people who were there that didn't want to go home because, there were guys there. The majority of people in federal prison at the level I was at were there for drugs.
Yeah.
80% of people meth, stuff like that, weed. And so, but there's guys that had been selling drugs since they were a kid and they didn't want to get out because the only thing they had to go back to was selling drugs. So they knew they were going to be back, so I saw people cry. But anyway, I was involved in a real estate investing deal and we were buying people's houses and then renting it back to them, paying off their debt, giving them a chance to buy their house back. But my former business partner lied on about $15 million worth of mortgage applications. My name was on paperwork and I looked the other way on stuff. I didn't question stuff. I had a separate responsibility for being there.
You had an idea something was going on.
Yeah. And I asked him and he said, yes, but I at one point I did leave, but it was too late. So, and I got sentenced to 14 months in prison. I spent 366 days there, but you would think that was rock bottom. But unfortunately I didn't work on the things I needed to work on. So when I got out of prison,
you probably hated yourself more.
There's some PTSD that comes along with that for sure. Felt even worse, worked, it took me a year to reconcile with my kids, to the point where they would have a relationship with me again. But, lots more self-sabotage, going back to having relationships with women who I probably shouldn't have had relationships with or who were in bad situations with their husbands. And so, wasting money again, giving my kids everything they wanted because I felt terrible. And then I met somebody in April of 2015 who I started a relationship with. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this work. And so, I let millions of red flags pass. And even I think she was 2015, so 6, even my 9-year-old daughter, 10-year-old daughter was like, you got to get out of this. And I didn't listen. And so, obviously I wasn't perfect either, but this person was an extremely toxic, horrible person. And I found out after 4.5 years, I said, hey, she wouldn't move down to be with me, except she accepted an engagement ring from me. And I found out on September 7th of 19, I think that she had lied to me about everything. And she, in fact, was married the entire time we were together. She lived in Illinois. I lived here in Texas. So virtually everything she told me was a lie. Yeah. And so I was devastated by that. And then the next month, October was my rock bottom. I decided I was going to kill myself. I was really going to take my own life. In fact, I'm sitting where I was sitting before. I turned it into my little podcast area, but I remember sitting, there's a French door over there and there's a garage. You can see the light. And I was sitting here thinking, like, how am I going to kill myself? And I was going through the different ways I could do it. Then just kind of probably God reaching down to me, I started thinking about my dad and when my dad died. And I was 23, my sister was 19, my brother was 17, how terrible that was, thinking about my kids. And I decided that I'm like, I can't do this to them. And so then I went on a very long, painful but valuable journey to heal myself and do what I needed to do to make sure that I took care of myself, to resolve for the better, basically 45 years of issues and challenges and just a bunch of stuff that I never taken a look at. I'm saying? It's like going up into the attic and opening boxes you haven't seen in a while. And some of the stuff in the boxes was terrible. And quite honestly, the majority of the pain that I had to work through was stuff that I had done. You know what I'm saying? I mean, sure, stuff was done to me, but at the end of the day, most of it was things that I had done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, when you unscrew, it's like you ever taking the cap off a radiator when it's still too hot.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Right? That's what it's like, And so things just come rushing forward. And so, I've been working pretty consistently on it for the last 3 years. And, what I determined was that, and it's funny, it's interesting, it's like, once you have shifts in mindset and belief systems, you see things you didn't see before. I'm saying? You hear things you didn't hear before. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so,
yep. Your lens shifts. It's like I equate it to being like I'm blind. I have contacts, Wally, and you've seen me with glasses, but like I'm completely blind. So when I go to the eye doctor, and every year when you have those tests, they flip the scope in front of your eyes, and it's like, can you see better here or here? And it comes into focus, and all of a sudden you can see the second row, to the bottom, and like, oh my God, before that was fuzzy. Before I couldn't see that at all. It's like as you grow, as your mind shifts, those lenses come down, you see things clearly. It's like, oh my God, I can see the leaves. Oh my God, there's detail here.
Sure. And that, that's kind of awareness is the first part of solving any problem, is becoming aware that it exists. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what happened. It's a double-edged sword. It's amazing because it's the only way to get started on things, but it's also can be very painful, But anyway, so all of a sudden all these people started popping up in my life that needed help with things. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, oh, I can help them with that. Oh, I went through that. Oh, I can talk about that. And so I'm like, well, and then so I started talking with people, and then, I started helping people, and they were like, oh my God, this is incredible. And so I created a business around it. You know what I'm saying? And so now I spend a good part of my days talking with people and helping them overcome the issues that keep them from being good on the phone, good in front of a camera, any sort of sales reluctance whatsoever. For that matter, I talk with people who aren't even in sales, that need help with things that have been plaguing them since they were a child. And the thing is, you don't have to have had a train wreck of a childhood like I did to, I think some people get into this comparison game where oh, well, mine wasn't as bad as yours. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. I mean, a perfect example is I have a friend, she's a former client of mine. She's a good friend of mine. She wore dress shoes to gym class one time, and the kids made fun of her like mercilessly for months. And she became a huge perfectionist and would not leave her house unless she looked perfect. All brand name clothes, expensive purses, Mercedes car, hair extensions,
one experience,
nails, every day, eyelashes, like would not leave the house unless she looked perfect and wouldn't pick up the phone. You know what I'm saying? So she was a perfectionist. Procrastination. So, it doesn't have to be something huge. It could be a singular experience that just literally you create this meaning behind it. And then, and here's what happens. It gets planted like a little seed. But then every time something comes up that reinforces that pain that you want to avoid, you water, pull the weeds. So it's a seedling, then it's a plant, then it's a bush, then it's a big bush, then it's a tree, then it's like a sequoia tree. And then, you don't even think about it. You just avoid it altogether because there's so much pain associated with it, And the thing is having gone through most of my life, literally, 45 plus years at the time, most of my life with things unchecked, it really gets bad. And eventually it's going, like your brain wants peace, right? It wants clarity. It wants understanding. And so you can push it down as much as you want. It's going to keep coming back up, push it down. So if you're listening here and you feel self-sabotage, like when anything good comes up, all of a sudden either you ruin it or it gets ruined, that's just your brain going, hey, you know what? We've got to work on this. Don't forget this. We got to work on this because, you know what I'm saying? And it brings up the events and the feelings that eventually cause you to get angry, upset, depressed, anxious, sad, say something you don't mean, and never just push it back down again. So.
Wow. And like, I love how it ties together, and, you talk about helping people overcome their call reluctance and their sales, all the things that are tied to sales, but then you talk about how it ties deeper sometimes into nothing sales at all. And it's just personal things that are happening in their life. And I found, we've talked about this, but I found so often that the real life things, the same things that are keeping you away from the phones or keeping you from talking to that person or from going out and getting what you truly want in life.
Sure.
Your self-worth and what you think of yourself all ties into it, whether it's in sales or your relationships or whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah. And to your point, you're very, very astute, very, very intuitive of you. But look, the same thing that keeps you from getting on the phone is the same thing that keeps you from using your time well. It's the same thing that keeps you from going to the gym. It's the same thing that keeps you from working on a diet. It's the same thing that keeps you from having conversations in relationship for things that aren't making you happy.
Yep.
It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? And it has nothing to do with those activities. Everything to do with, how you feel about yourself, what you believe to be true, what you think you can do, what you think you can't do. Right. So all that stuff And so, people who don't use their time well, people who have trouble sticking to their goals, I'm saying? I've seen multiple, and this makes me sad because I want everybody to be able to have a happy life because I live my life in absolute pain. It's fun, but let me. I will get to my point. But I remember when I started working with my counselor a while back, she's like, "Hey, tell me about the happiest day of your life." And I looked at her, and I was like, "I don't have any happy days. I didn't have any happy days. I couldn't think of one happy day. I mean, I had nightmares forever when I was a kid, and I'm saying, the happiest days of my life have been the last 2 years of my life. Ages 51 and 52 and 53. Into 54. So, but all I'm saying, it's sad for me because I've seen people who have these amazing goal boards and they're beautiful and these vision boards and they sit there and they collect dust and nothing happens. And then I can see when I talk to them the disappointment and the sadness and they like this almost this hopelessness. I'm saying that they're never going to accomplish it. And quite honestly, we can unlock so much and really resolve so much in a period of time much shorter than we think we could. And I mean, I had a tremendous amount of baggage to unload, and even I, after 6 months, felt considerably better. I wasn't where I wanted to be, but even after 6 months, I'm like, wow, I feel like a huge weight has been lifted. And the momentum that creates for us is incredible. So go ahead.
Oh, no, I was listening. No.
Oh, no. But the momentum that creates for us is amazing. And the thing is, but we have to do the work. I'm saying it's not going to, you're not going to wake up one day and be thin or happy or wealthy or ready to jump on the phones or ready to do sales. Or I'm saying there's no feel better fairy that's going to, there were times I prayed and went to bed and say, listen, just let me live through another night. I weighed almost 480 pounds when I went to prison. I was praying every night. I'm like, don't let me die. I just don't let me die. I just don't want to die. I'm saying I didn't know, I didn't fix it or anything. I was just praying, don't let me die. Please don't let me die, So, but once you become aware of what it is, and it's very easy. It's real simple. It just your subconscious remembers everything you ever tasted, touched, smelled, heard, or seen. Remembers it all.
Yep.
For most of it, it's just like a sandwich. You know what I'm saying? And for the stuff that's really painful, it's on the bottom of the sandwich. It gets pushed down. So what happens is, we can ask our subconscious to answer questions for us. Right? If you don't know why something's happened, just say, hey, geez, subconscious, why is this happening? Tell me what's going on. And it'll find it for you. Now, I tell people, part of my class, what I teach people is go get a couple index cards and just write down, what is what is the source of my call reluctance? What is the source of my video reluctance? What is the source of my perfectionism? What is the source of my procrastination? Why am I unable to keep a calendar? Why can't I lose weight? What's keeping me from losing weight? Whatever it is.
What's my unhealthy relationship with food?
Yeah, exactly. Or, why do I have a bad relationship with food? I take two cards, keep one with you, put the other one next to your bedstand, and I would say your nightstand next to bed. I would say if you're honest with yourself and you're willing to let it happen, you'll find out within the night. I've gotten texts from people at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're a fucking asshole. I can't believe, what I'm saying? Because they go find it. Now you're like, oh, now what do I do? You know what I'm saying? But that's, and pardon me for swearing. You can cut that out if you want. So,
this is it's coffee and grit.
No, that's fine. That's more grit there. But anyway, but I've gotten stuff like that. But the thing is that's where you need to go find it, right? We can't fight a battle against an enemy that we don't know exists or what it looks like. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so we have to do that, And so that's where it all starts. And then it's a matter of doing the work to heal yourself. And does it suck? It can, yeah, it can suck really bad, but it doesn't suck as much as a continued lifetime of unfulfilled dreams and joy and happiness and great relationships. And, what I'm saying? So,
well, just in the sense you summed it up without even realizing a few minutes ago. And you said the happiest times of your life have been within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Now you think about if this journey was so horrible and so, it's hard. It's probably, it's all tough to go through and unravel that stuff, but it's created and fostered the happiest couple of years of your life that you've had.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's not that a lot of good things didn't happen to me, because a lot of good things did happen to me.
Oh yeah.
It's just that I didn't feel that I deserved them or that I was worthy of them or that good things happened. I got a great education. I was making like six figures by the time I was 28. I married somebody. I got 4 beautiful kids. I've had lots of great things happen for me. It's just that I didn't believe I deserved them, and I just didn't feel that I was worth it. Yeah. And so I found no joy or happiness around it, because my achievement was to try and outrun my shame. Everything I achieved was trying to make me feel better about myself and outrun my shame, but you can't outrun your shame. And so it didn't matter what happened. If it was good, I ignored it. Or I said, I don't deserve that, or why is that happening to me? or that must be a mistake. Give me an example. So I started playing football in ninth grade, and my mother was like, well, you can't play football until your grades get better. My mother didn't know that I was miserable from age 6 and my grades weren't good because, nobody could figure out why I was spent, 3 out of 4 at 5 days in the principal's office.
Yeah.
Or why I was meeting with a counselor all the time and my grades sucked and I wasn't behaving in class. And looking back, we know why now. But, so I started, for some reason, high school, I don't know what happened, maybe because something good happened. I started playing football in ninth grade. My senior year, I was the defensive player of the year for the state of New Hampshire, and my school gave me the outstanding lineman of the year award. But I thought they made a mistake. I was like, I called the paper. I'm like, you put my name, is that right? What I'm saying? Like, they called my name and I was like, what? What I'm saying? Because I was like, no way. What I'm saying? And so it was that kind of belief system that was like, just, they must have made a mistake. They had to. So, and that was my mindset. What I'm saying? And I either blew everything up that happened or I completely downplayed it and minimized it, And so as you do that more and more and more, it gets worse and worse and worse. You make worse and worse decisions. What I'm saying? So
it's just a testament that it doesn't matter what's going on in your life.
Mm-mm.
You look
or
at people and they have
or
tons of money, how long it's been happening. You look at people that have tons of money, or they're college athletes, they're pro athletes, they've got they're CEOs of companies. They seems like they got everything. But how many of those people are just filling that hole of that shame? With their cars and houses and just overindulgence in so many different ways.
John Belushi, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison. What I'm saying? Those are all actors and actresses, but what I'm saying? I mean, there's so many people that just are in so much pain and they have a skill set and they've leveraged it and they're making tons of money, but they're not solving the problem,
Yeah.
And listen, I think Zig Ziglar said it best. He's like, I've had no money and I've had money. I'd much rather have it.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Yeah, he said never once. But he said never once has the redhead. He calls his wife Jean the redhead. He goes, never once has the redhead said to me that what she's wearing doesn't go with what I'm carrying. But that does not solve the problem. What I'm saying? It certainly makes the ride a lot better, But, having the money, and quite honestly, the amount of money you're going to bring into your life is going to be in direct proportion to how you feel about yourself. Eventually, how much more successful you are in all those things based on how you feel about yourself. So my message, sorry, go ahead.
You said you lost $5 million over time.
Yeah,
right? You lost millions and millions of dollars because you didn't feel like you deserved it.
Yeah, lost would be a poor choice of words. I blew it.
Yeah, but because you didn't feel like you deserved it. So it's like, get rid of it as fast as you can. It wasn't yours anyways.
Like, hey, I want you to like me, so let's go do something. Let me spend money on this. Let me spend money on that. Or, I didn't appreciate it. I'm saying? One of the stories I tell in my book is that I had to have a BMW when I was selling houses. I just had to have it, and so I went and called the BMW office, got pre-approved for BMW financing. I went and picked up the car in 2001, and then basically because of the real estate investing I was doing and all the other dumb stuff that happened in 2007, my life was falling apart and we couldn't pay our bills. I just bought a $440,000 house in 2004, bought my ex-wife a brand new van, and I was just spending money like an idiot. And I remember my ex-wife had like one of those candle parties at our house. There were a bunch of people at the house, and I was outside and I saw a one of those flatbed wreckers coming, and I knew they were coming to get my car. And I said to him, hey, listen, can we just pull down the road so we don't, because I didn't want all those people to see the car.
People there.
So they let me drive down the road and they pulled it up away from my house. They pulled it up and I walked back to my house. I mean, that's just, that's one of several stories like that, but it was my fault. I'm saying? I just blew money. I was an idiot. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be seen. My ego was in dire need of some love. So I went about it the wrong way. I had to sell my house. I do a short sale to my house. I moved to Texas because the only place I could get a job. Everything works out for the right, for the reason that God wants it to. But yeah, so it was some crazy stuff.
So what was that first step to start really fixing it? Because it wasn't the money, it wasn't the possessions, it wasn't all that stuff. Like, what was the first step to climb out and actually start changing?
I remember I was, I don't know if this triggered or not, but, one of the things you do when you make a lot of bad decisions, you don't read paperwork. You don't ask questions, you don't ask for details. And so I had been referred to somebody by a guy who did some work on my credit for me. He said these people do school loan, refinances, revisions, whatever they call, and rehabs. So I called them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, all you have to do is send us a pay stub and this and that, and we'll go ahead and get you into a new loan and make it so you don't have to make payments for a little while." I'm like, "Okay, great, no problem." Didn't read the agreement, and so they took care of it. I said, "That's awesome." They sent me the paperwork, and I looked at the paperwork. I'm like, "Wait a second, this doesn't look right." And so I called them, and so I freaked out. And I had experienced anxiety for a long time, like for decades, and I freaked out and I called them. And so what I found out is that they actually went on to my profile on my federal loan, your school loan federal profile, and they went ahead and made an application for me with some false stuff in it. So, okay, guess what? When you're a convicted felon, you get zero gray area. So I absolutely freaked out, and I had to hire an attorney to get everything fixed. But I would go to bed every night, and I was in so much pain emotionally. I'm like, I can't keep doing this anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like I have to. Like I literally, I was like, I can't do this. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, I got to get help. And that was kind of not long after I made the decision that October. You know what I'm saying? It probably a couple months after that is when I started the process. And I still remember getting that mail and freaking out, you know what I'm saying? And I had an attorney. It cost me $4,000 to undo it, And so, but that was it. I was just in so much pain. And I just, I was literally like working during the day. I would get up, I would work all day. I would go to bed. And on the weekends, I would stay in bed all weekend and watch TV, or I would sleep. And that was it. And I was just like, you know what? I cannot do this. People are coming and knocking on my door to make sure I'm okay. My kids are calling me saying, "Hey, where are you? We haven't heard from you." And so I was literally like, that was it. You know what I'm saying? I just was like, I can't do this anymore. And that's what rock bottom is when you have so much pain. And that's why, some people unfortunately take their lives, you know what I'm saying? And I thought about it and I was close to it, but I was fortunate enough that, I didn't.
Why?
But I can see why people do that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but listen, I had a why my entire life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? A why for money. I had a why for kids. You know what I'm saying? Lots of whys. You got to tap into that why and let it move you. Right. And so, but I was just at a point where it's like, I can't keep doing this no more. I don't want any more. I want off the ride. I want off the ride. And so that was really what was it. And I decided I was going to go get some help, and it's interesting because what was hard for me is that I had spent my entire life helping people as a coach, you know what I'm saying? Helping people make a lot of money and helping save their marriages and actually keep them from killing themselves and helping them become, even better versions of themselves. And I couldn't do it for myself. And what I learned is that we can't be our own coach. We can't be our own counselor, our own therapist, our own doctor. We got to go meet other people who have experiences and thought processes that are different than ours, so they can lead us through that, And so, a lot of people, just like I was, I didn't want to go get help from other people because it was shameful for me and disappointing for me that I couldn't. I couldn't do it myself, and I've been doing it, and that really hurt me. But there are, you need help. Asking for help, being vulnerable is strength. It's not weakness. Okay, going and asking for help, looking for help in any way, in any area. If somebody reaches out to you because they want to turn their passion into a business, they want to learn how to eat faces, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
Right? They gotta go and work with a guy like you because you can collapse time for them and shorten it. And we got to put our egos to the side and say, listen, I don't know what I don't know, but if I go work with Jason Tracy, I know that I'm going to get to where I want to go faster, easier, probably cheaper than if I did it myself. And that's what we have to acknowledge within ourselves is that, hey, listen, I can't do this, and I don't want to feel like this anymore. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it was. I was laying in bed and I was in a ridiculous amount of emotional pain and I was sleeping and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't, and I had finally reached the very, very bottom. And, there's three options. You can give up. You can take your own life, or you can just give up and stay there, or you can bounce. And I chose to bounce.
Man. So you climb up out of that bed. Where do you go get the help out? Because you've been in the coaching world and stuff like that. Do you know somebody? How do you, where do you go?
I knew tons of people,
Yeah.
And so.
But that's got to be tough in that vulnerability space too, knowing the people.
Yeah. Calling people that I know and being like, what would you do here? I did a little of that. And I'm like, I need professional help. And so I went and found a psychiatrist to start with and engaged in some dialectical behavioral therapy, which is really understanding your emotions and learning how to become mindful and present when pain comes up to retrain your brain, which is part of what I teach in my class. But I got fired from the psychiatrist and from the emotional eating expert I was working with because they didn't feel I was committed to the process. And so partially I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I went through thousands of dollars of tests. I started working with them, and we just didn't connect. And honestly, I wasn't doing the job that I could do. And then by a stroke of luck, I was like, you know, I got to go find an addiction expert. I was addicted to sex, pornography, food, and money. So I had lots of fun things to work on. And I called this specialist group in my area, and they're like, we don't have anybody now. I'm like, oh. I mean, I called for hours on days because I was committed to finding somebody. And they're like, well, we can put you on the wait list. And like, I'm not a waiter. I don't wait. You know what I'm saying? If there's a line someplace.
You're like, go. I'm at rock bottom. I made a decision. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm not waiting. But for some reason, I said, okay, I'll put my name on the list. And I got connected with a provider named Kelly. And, you know, she basically saved my life. And so, you know, we talked twice a week for a year and a half. You know, and there were in the beginning, we would get off and she's like, you're not going to hurt yourself this weekend, are you? And I said, I don't think so. And she says, well, if you are, then I got to call somebody. And so, you know,
you're like, no.
No. I don't, you know, I'm saying whatever that was. But yeah, I mean, I would get off every call. She would ask me for that. You know, I'm saying she would check in, but that's how bad it was, you know, but you can do it. You know, I'm saying if I can go after, you know, 45 years of self-hatred, self-doubt, lack of self-worth, you know, wanting to kill myself, going to prison, disappointing a truckload of people, hurting my children, hurting lots of people I know, you know, including my mother. My mother was actually one of the investors in the real estate deals that we did. And my mother was like the goody two shoes poster child. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't think she got a speeding ticket in her life. You know what I'm saying? And so for her to have a foreclosure on her record and for her credit to get hammered or for them to take credit cards. And she died of cancer. And this all happened while she was dying of cancer. And I remember sitting next to her the day before she died and looking at her. And I'm like, you know, please forgive me. And she did not forgive me. And, you know, I remember I had asked her to borrow her car so I could go get a suit. And I even asked her for the money for the suit. And she said, yeah, no problem. But then she called my brother and sister and told them not to let me use the car, because she was that mad at me. So that was one of the big things I had to process was, you know, basically screwing over my mother unintentionally, but still did it and not having her forgive me, you know? Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff, you know? And,
it's stuff you can't change. It's stuff you can't.
Hell no. You know, and my, you know, if you have somebody in your life, family that you don't love, that you need to forgive them and make peace with them and, you know, let them know how you feel. So that way, at least you said your part while they were still alive. But one of the things is a compound effect to not leaving things unresolved. The older we get, the more problems we have, the more our brain wants to resolve it. And eventually we're going to come to some sort of traumatic situation. The pandemic literally ripped the lid off of truckloads of trauma and anger and sadness and unresolved issues for people. You know what I'm saying? Like that. I mean, there were people that went off the deep end. I think mental health challenges went up, you know, 100-fold, I think, because people were building all these things down. But then when the trauma comes, that's when the anxiety and the depression, that's when your brain's like, okay, we got to deal with this. And it literally unleashes it. And that a lot of people went and got help, which is great. But, you know, if you have stuff from when you were younger and you haven't dealt with it, there will be a day of reckoning, because either something's going to come up and you have to deal with it, or something crappy is going to happen in your life and it's going to pop the tops and it's going to come. So, I mean, you're either going to do it on your own or you're going to be forced to do it, unfortunately. And I wish I could say something different, but I can't.
I've heard this.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely total makes sense. And I thought this, I think it's Brene Brown that I heard this from, that like you can easily spot where your triggers are at, where you're, you know, were like, I thought of this earlier when you were asking the questions, you're talking about writing the questions down because your brain will find the answers. You know, if you're in a conversation with your spouse, what sets you off? What can they say that makes you mad instantly? That's a trigger. That's something that is deep seated to your childhood.
All of it's deep seated to our childhood.
All of it's my wife and I, Gracie, I had her on the podcast 2 weeks ago, and we talked about we talked about our relationship and our communication and like how in the beginning, let's be real. For most of our relationship, she pissed me off because she'd ask me questions, whether I was like in my vision state and I'm like building the dream, right? And like I'm going to build this business and like I'm all excited. And she starts asking me questions, bring down my reality Or when I'm in like a pity party and I just want to feel bad for myself, and she starts asking me questions to try to like move me out of that because she's being rational, right? And that used to make me so mad. I didn't get why she did that. And now, as I've like grown and shifted my perspective, seeing that lens differently, I see how much of a strength that is, and how much of a strength it was before, and how stupid and immature I was, you know, through that process.
Yeah. No, but it's you weren't stupid. That's not stupidity. Is when somebody says don't touch a flame and you touch the flame, that's stupid.
Yeah,
that's not stupidity. That's just immaturity. It's true ignorance. Like ignorance, not being ignorant, but ignorance, like not knowing. You know what I mean? Like that's just a matter of not knowing. I would say most of our issues as a society are rooted around a need for approval and need for acceptance.
Absolutely. Yep.
65.
It comes down to my childhood. It came. All those things came down to my childhood. Somebody's rejecting me, right?
Yeah, exactly. And being, feeling and being questioned is, why are you questioning me? Do you not approve of me? Do you not believe me? Do you not trust me?
Yeah.
If that makes
Whose side
sense.
are you on?
Yeah, exactly. Right. But it's not rejection. It's just getting clear. But that, like Jeff Foxworthy does a funny thing about, he gets a message that somebody died and there's a funeral and he says something and his wife asks a question. He keeps giving her the same answer. She asks like 10 questions. It's the same answer. So it's pretty funny. But, 65% of salespeople have a very strong need for approval. Okay. Not want. Like I want to be approved. I want to be liked.
Yep.
Right. But I'm not going to let your desire or not. I don't want to let your lack of approval of me keep me from moving forward. Right. And that's why so many salespeople don't reach their goals. That's why so many salespeople don't get to where they need to go, because they have such a strong need to be liked and be approved of. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They don't want to be rejected. They don't want to be
paralyzing. I watch people spend, and you see this too because you're working with salespeople. How much time do they spend on typing up their email using the right freaking word, right? Like,
it's unfortunate, and I was guilty of that too.
Me too. But,
I've had coaching clients that would work with me for 3 or 4 months, and I'm like, hey, I got to let you go, and they're like, why? I said, because we're not making any progress. I'm not going to take your money.
Yeah.
They're like, no, you're going to help me. I said, I can't. I'm saying like, you can't keep doing this because I'm not, we're not getting results. This is like a very expensive gym membership for you. You know what I'm saying? And so, if you're watching this and you're really sincere about living a better quality of life, you got to go put those note cards out and start asking yourself what it is that's causing it, and it will come up, and then you can start dealing with it. There's no shame in going and getting professional help. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can help you too if you want. I'm not trying to sell anything, but there's no problem. There's no shame in getting professional help, especially if you want to be happy and healthy and filled with joy and want to wake up every morning,
Well, we've talked about this overarching theme of the lens and seeing things differently, right? But how do you see things differently unless you have somebody that's there with you that sees what you're trying to see, right?
No, I mean, yeah.
They can help you and ask you questions and help you find your way. They can't tell you how to feel, but they can help you find your way to what they see. But if you're sitting with somebody that's in the same mindset as you, or somebody that you've pissed off or disappointed, or that, your mom, right? If you sat and thought about how your mom feels about you at the end all the time, you would never be able to get out of that. Like you'd always be stuck there.
It's true. And it's interesting. Like some people think that they need some sort of shocking experience, some sort of near-death experience, or they want a coach that's mean and nasty and brutally honest with them. And I'm like, that, like I was talking to somebody the other day. There's probably 4 instances in my life where I should be dead right now. Like literally dead, like, near-death experiences, during COVID. The last one was during COVID, and I got COVID and then I got pneumonia, and they put me on a bunch of steroids and stuff. And I have, type 2 diabetes and I'm working on getting rid of it, but it made my sugar go up to like 550. And, well, here's what happened. I was laying there and taking my medicine for the night. I put on a movie. I was sitting in my chair, and all of a sudden I noticed my arm was moving, but I wasn't moving it. So it was going like this, and I'm like, that's weird. Yeah. And so I relaxed for a second, then I did it again, and I called a buddy of mine. I'm like, hey, he goes, you need to call 911. And so 911 came. They checked my vitals. They're like, do you want to go to the emergency room? I'm like, well, what do you think? So they took my blood sugar. They're like, your blood sugar is 550. Now you're our responsibility. So we're going to bring you in. And then an hour later, the doctor came in and said, your blood sugar went up to 750. We have no idea why you're not dead or in a coma right now, but you got to spend the night here. So I spent 3 days in the hospital. So, I mean, things like that. I mean, fortunately, I was in a much better place at that point, but it was things like that would happen to me that I would just let. I would just, I would say, oh, okay. I was doing 75 miles an hour and somebody cut me off on the highway, and I careened off of a off of a guardrail into a ditch. And I remember walking up to the top of the hill, and the guy's like, "Oh, what happened to the guy in the car?" I'm like, "I am the guy in the car." So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, God clearly wants me around, but, you know, we can't wait for some sort of like striking near-death, horrible experience to rattle us so that we're going to make changes. You know what I'm saying? We've got to take control and do it ourselves. You know, I'm going to be the first to admit that I'm probably one of the luckiest people on the face of the planet for any number of reasons, you know, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I don't take that for granted.
I love that you realize that now you're lucky and you're receiving these opportunities for because you deserve them. Yeah. I mean,
I you know, may I make a distinction?
Yeah.
I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I like the word worthy versus deserve.
Worthy. Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because being worthy of something, you have to do nothing to be worthy of something. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to do something to deserve something, right?
Yeah.
Deserve is the reward. Worthy is just because of who you are. That's just my personal opinion. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how that resonates with you, you know, but like, you know, I say to my kids, I'm like, I'm proud of you. They're like, why? I'm like, because of who you are. You don't have to do anything so I can be proud of you. You know what I'm saying? I'm just proud of you because of the person that you are and just who you are as a person, you know?
Yep.
And I try and take the reward-based, strategy out of that, if that makes any sense.
Nope, I get it.
Just a thought.
Yeah. No, and I said it that way because before we talked about kind of that opposite of not feeling like you deserved what you were getting in life. Right.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't mean to put you on the defensive.
No, you're good. No,
I appreciate what you said.
That perspective.
I'm just saying I like worthy versus deserving because in my mind, just my personal opinion, deserving means you had to do something to get it.
Yep.
You know, and you don't have to do anything to be, to be loved, to be appreciated, to be who you are, to be good enough. That's not a deserve thing. That's a worthy thing. We're all good enough. We're all worthy of love. We're all worthy of affection. We're all worthy of having a great life. We're all worthy of being approved of. We're all worthy of being accepted, right? You don't have to do anything. You know what I'm saying? You don't do any of that. Do anything to get any of those things in life because you're already worthy of it because of who you are. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from me over the last several years of, the not needing approval from people and just being good enough the way that I am.
It's beautiful, man. And that is a beautiful, beautiful way to end
this
conversation. And
Thank you so much.
To people, again, we've talked about so many different things in the sense of just really go find what makes you happy, but also understand what doesn't make you happy. What is triggering you? Where do you feel undeserving?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Telling you, get those note cards out, write a couple questions to yourself. Some people, there's a strong possibility that somebody's watching this that they already know. I find it because that's the first class that I do with people. I said, hey, let's go. We're going to figure out this week exactly what it is that's caused this. And I can see people's eyes, I can see their back of their head, and I can see the smoke coming out of their ears, and their brain's already like, okay, I already know what this is, I already found it, you know what I'm saying? And so, but once you find it, you got to go do something about it. You can't just take it and stuff it back down again, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's why I say knowing is half the battle, right? Once you know,
probably
you can now take that step like yourself and move forward, For me in sales, we talked about sales and that call reluctance and diving deep. When I'd get on the phone, I felt a certain way. I felt like I felt like a slick salesperson. I felt like I was slimy. I felt like I put all that stuff on my shoulders, even though I'm not that person. I felt like that's who I was when I picked up the phone. And for years, I didn't know why. And when I did go do that deep work, I remember being a little kid and being at my grandma's house. And my grandma, whenever a telemarketer would call, would like just make it a field day to make this person feel miserable, right? Like make them rue the day that they ever called my grandma's house. And she would just, tell them off or, say whatever, be completely mean and rude and then hang up on them and then hang up and then we'd all laugh at that person's expense. And so thinking about, wow, I feel like I'm that person, right? I feel like I'm calling my grandma and this is what's happening. It's like it goes. And so I had to do work around that.
But that's it though. But that wasn't a hugely traumatic experience.
No, not at all.
There was no physical, emotional, sexual abuse around that. That's just a learned belief system,
Yep. There was no violence. There was no my threat of my life.
But that's how it happens. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Or some people have alcoholic parents who are unavailable emotionally.
Yep.
Or I've talked to people who are stepsisters and stepbrothers. So the stepbrother and the kid of the stepdad or stepmom got more attention than they did. Or they only got approved of when they did something right. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be monumental. It can be something small like that. And it just, over time, it grows and grows and grows. You don't even think about it because it's literally growing like mold in the back of your head. You know what I'm saying? You don't see it. But eventually, you know, when you try to go and do something, it's like, whoa, and grab something. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. Thanks for telling people about my book. I appreciate that and everything.
Absolutely.
You know?
Check out Tragic Hero. Where can they get it?
Can I show it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it looks like. Anyway, so it's called Tragic Hero: Picking Up the Pieces. You can get it on Amazon. There's a Kindle version and a written hardcover version now. I'm working on the Audible version of it now. But yeah, I mean, if you're ready, you know, if you're finally ready to make the changes you want in your life, whether it's for business or personal or both, you know what I'm saying? It's the opportunity to change, and the blueprint is available for you.
I can tell you it's a phenomenal book. And I love, you know, as we tell this story and we talk about, again, that unworthiness and being vulnerable. And I see you now and you share your story, you know, on social media. We've talked openly like this so many times. You're sharing your vulnerability in your book. I've got the luckiness and gratefulness to be able to get a copy of your book and be able to give a review on it on the book several months ago, and that was super awesome. And again, just having kind of a similar childhood to you, from that sense of, you know, being a victim myself, and you know, I just really resonated with the book, and I think that there's a big portion of people that need to pick up this book and read it. Also,
there's your
I made the book.
Right there, you made the book. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. And, you know, it's interesting, you know, people show up in your life. I believe is that people show up at the right time for the right reason, right? It's either a lesson or a blessing, you know, and it's been a blessing getting to know you and learning from you and meeting you. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully doing some good things with you going forward. But this has been an outstanding experience, and I really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of the day. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Good luck. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Wally.
Bye-bye.